Good Monday morning to you. Welcome on into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. Boy, oh boy, what a weekend of college football. We want to get your reaction. 205-834-9450. You can text in, you can call in. Well, Conrad, I think we were expecting a different conversation when we were going to walk in this morning. Alabama went out there. They answered the questions that we needed to answer about, okay, have they flipped the page over since the Vanderbilt loss? And after Saturday against South Carolina, I think we're both sitting up here a little bit more uneasy than we thought we would be. But then we kind of look at the whole landscape of college footballs, primarily in the SEC. And I think this is going to be, when I say a game-by-game process on how we start to look at these teams, just your initial reaction from what you saw from Alabama, and do you still have question marks about this team moving forward?
Well, yes. Yeah, I might have more questions than I went into the weekend with, honestly. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't pretty. I mean, I say this jokingly, but a win is a win. So you're happy that you got a win because you didn't a week ago. But no, there's a lot of I said last week I felt like you were going to see Alabama come out and play possibly the best game they'd played all season, just in terms of playing a complete 60 minutes and being fired up, and everything you heard last week from DeBoer and Womack and the players, and they said all of the right things right after the Vanderbilt game, right? They took it on the chin. They talked about how they were going to come out and you were going to see a more inspired, a more aggressive, a more I guess just mentally sharp Alabama football team. And we certainly did not get that on Saturday. And so now not only do I think some of the questions persist about the defense played better than they did against Vanderbilt, but it still wasn't very good. Outside of the one drive after the halftime, you did a better job of getting off the field on 3rd and 4th down. But you still give up, you have a big tip play that you give up on a 4th down there late in the first half that makes the game go from 14-0 to 14-7. And then, the 2 minutes that ensued after that were, two of the worst minutes of Alabama football that I've ever seen. And, you have Jalen Milroe forcing things and making decisions that look like the Jalen Milroe we saw early last season. And to be honest, I think that there are a handful of plays and situations you can look at from the game, and you kind of look at Kalen DeBoer and go, all right, what are we doing here? And I understand that he's an offensive guy, he's an aggressive guy. We'll hear some of the stuff he had to say after the game, but I just look at a game where it wasn't going to be pretty regardless, but to go from, all right, you're calling a timeout on a 3rd and 20 with 10 seconds left in a half because, in your own words, well, we're one pass away from having an opportunity to throw it in the end zone on the final play of the half. And I'm like, okay, and I get that, but you're on 3rd and 20 and we're sitting here thinking about, well, how are we going to score? Okay, and I understand you want to go and get points back and earn some momentum back. Did you not just see what happened in the last minute and a half? You had the safety from you had the 4th and down play or 4th and 9, whatever, where you give up the long touchdown. Then you get a safety from Jalen Milroe, and you're still trying to be aggressive. And then you look at what happens at the end of the game. You have a situation where a player can take a knee and go down in bounds, and you can run out of clock and win a football game. And that was never even the discussion that was had, according to the player. And then you get in a situation late in the game where, again, you have a player who's potentially has a great play, gets an interception to seal it, and then he almost takes a knee in the end zone for a safety that would have sent the game to overtime. There's just
situational awareness.
None of it. There was none of it. And that starts with the coaching staff. And I think you can go from last week where we were sitting here going, well, the players don't look like they're interested. it's the players' problem. They're not motivated. They're not hungry. This is the problem with NIL. And, maybe that is the case, but I think right now, seriously, like, I think Kalen DeBoer is a good football coach, but I think that maybe he was overthinking things a little bit. And I think part of that is probably you just lost to Vanderbilt and you feel the pressure of, man, we just lost a game. And, when you lost games at Washington and at Fresno State, like, it's bad. You never want to lose a football game. You really don't lose football games at Alabama. And I think maybe this last week you start to realize, oh, like, we lose one game here and people want me gone. And that's a different kind of pressure. And that's a different kind of, it's a different job, right? Like, and that with Alabama football, but it just felt to me at times like maybe he was pressing a little bit. And, when you're a player and you feel like your coach is maybe a little tense and your coach is pressing a little bit, it maybe that carries off or wears off on you a little bit. So, yeah, it wasn't good, man. You still can't run the football.
That is a problem. That's going to be a problem for Alabama.
It's a big problem.
And a lot of credit to South Carolina, especially their front seven, primarily their defensive linemen. They were putting a lot of pressure on Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe was beat up after the game. No, I don't care how you slice it.
Oh yeah,
he was. He
doesn't want to see Kyle Kennard ever again. I'll tell you.
Never breathing down. Like I'm talking about just about every snap five was somewhere in the vicinity. But I think for Alabama, this poses a lot of questions, and I think that it's very unique to see Alabama in this position because again, you'll count it. A win is a win. You would much rather have this conversation after a W than losing a ball game. And I think that one, South Carolina gave everything they possibly could. Lenore Sellers is going to get better. At least I believe he will get better. But there were moments in the game where he kind of sold out on South Carolina. You look at that 2-point conversion, and it's probably going to haunt him at night. One, Malachi Moore, you have got to get over there. Y'all are in man. There's no question about it. Like, everything was supposed to be accounted for when you have a 2-point play like that. You're not playing a matchup zone. No, that's your boy that's running out there on the corner wide open. Lenore Sellers has to give him a better ball. But I think collectively, it was not a good look. And I think you look at the stats of this game, and if I told you South Carolina got 374 yards of total offense, you're thinking, oh, well, they must have messed around and pulled off the upset. Well, their 374 came at the expense of Alabama, turnovers in key situations, in which they ended up getting the ball back, but also a play that we very rarely see successfully happen is the onside kick. And to your point, at the end of the game,
that play should never even happen.
The hands team are you have your most reliable 11 out there with the sure hands of, hey, if it gets around you, you fall on it. And I'm not going to say that tight ends don't need to be on it because it could be a blow up play, but to have a tight end that probably had, like 5 catches coming into the game anyway. And then in the most important situation of the hand situation, he touches it. The ball continues to have some stank on it, and it ends up South Carolina.
And another tight end goes forward and can't corral it. And it's like, oh, man, all right, you got 2 tight ends out there and neither one of them? Yeah.
Check that personnel. Check that 11 that's on the field. But, man, I came away from the game very uneasy about a lot of things because I didn't think that Alabama actually made a point to run the ball, and they couldn't do it. And I think that's a glaring issue because a lot of the questions that we were getting the past couple of weeks was, why aren't we getting the running backs involved? How come we're not getting the ball, in their hands a little bit more? Now, I will say when it was starting to, chew the clock, they were doing a good job. But I think South Carolina really had a good game plan for them on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they outside of Rocket Sanders and Lenore Sellers, they just don't have enough. And I think that's probably the biggest, I guess you'd say, gripe for Shane Beamer is they had opportunities. It wasn't like Alabama took it from them. South Carolina had many, many chances, especially in the second half, to win this ball game. It couldn't really finish. But I think for Alabama, you have some big issues moving forward because the teams that you're going to be facing, especially this weekend, granted, they had a little scare themselves, but they're better than South Carolina. And I think week by week, we are starting to just truly form the identity of a lot of these teams. Because early on, there was no question that, hey, Tennessee is probably one of the better teams in college football right now. Now you look at the past 2 weeks, it's, oh boy, if they do not figure this thing out. You thought Ole Miss was under a lot of pressure. I mean, I think you think of expectations for Tennessee this year. It's just going to be different for everybody, especially on the Alabama thing. We knew it was going to be different under Kalen DeBoer, but I did not expect them to. I'll just say I didn't expect them to struggle the way that they did against South Carolina. I thought South Carolina could make it interesting early on, but I didn't expect it to look this lethargic at 11 a.m. on Saturday.
No, and I mean, I think the reality for Alabama is right now is you're a solid football team that, let's be honest, you're a solid football team that's played 30 incredible minutes of football this year.
Yep.
And it just so happened to come against the best team you played. And that's good. And that doesn't mean that that part of Alabama can't resurface at times. It doesn't mean that you can't continue to improve, but I think it's more of a, we can now look at that and go, okay, the first half against Georgia was more of the anomaly. Everything else you've seen this season, that's who this Alabama football team is.
Yep.
And they're just, it doesn't seem like, first off, there just seems to be a lack of intensity. Straight up, like when you watch this team, I don't see the fire that, this does not look like a football team that was, a play or two away from playing in a national championship game last year, in the sense of having that chip on their shoulder and coming back this season and realizing, man, we got so close to reaching the mountaintop of college football, and you're going to do whatever it takes to get back there and have that opportunity and to seize that opportunity. And this looks like a team that they just don't want it right now. That's honestly what I see when I watch this team. They don't look like they want it. You don't see guys chirping at each other on the sidelines anymore. You don't see guys, sometimes they'll get fired up after a big play, but sometimes they won't. You see guys kind of looking like they're hanging their head a little bit when things happen or go wrong on a play. Just the body language seems to be off. And I don't know what that is, but at the end of the day, I think, a lot of that does kind of come down on Kalen DeBoer and the coaching staff, right? It's your job to get these guys fired up. It's your job to get these guys motivated to go out there on Saturdays and to be confident in what they're doing. And, it's great when we hear, again, after this game, like the Vanderbilt game, it's, I love I love the way that the guys responded this week. I thought that the intensity was there, the focus was there, and okay, well then where is it on Saturdays? Like, it's great if it's there on Tuesday practice, but why is it not translating from that to the games on the weekends? And I think that's a big concern moving forward, is you just don't look like you have a team that, this looks like Alabama last year before they figured it out. And you're now further along in the season than you were last year when you figured it out. And I don't know if there is a solution. There may not be. It just may be a year where pretty much every time Alabama goes out there on the field, it's going to be a one-score game, one way or the other. And it's going to look ugly at times. And that just may be the reality that we have to face right now. But yeah, the way that this team is constructed, they got to figure something out. And when you can't run the football, and when you see a defense eliminate Ryan Williams from the conversation for most of the game on Saturday, that's kind of what it is, right? Because you look at this offense, and that's what I mean. This is what Alabama's offense looks like without Ryan Williams making crazy plays, right? Is you're a solid offense. You're not an elite offense. And again, you have a lot to take away from this game, but at this point, I don't have any reason to believe moving forward that I'm going to see anything different, right? It doesn't mean Alabama can't win on Saturday against Tennessee. It doesn't mean they can't, win the rest of their games. But I think, I was talking with my friends on Saturday night, and it's, if you're an Alabama fan, the days of turning a game on and at halftime you kind of go,
I'll see how this is going to go.
Yeah, I can kind of mentally check out, right? You're just watching it for fun to see, how many points can we score? How much are we going to win? I think those days, at least for this season, I think those days are over.
Yeah.
And I know that's not a fun realization, but that's where you are. Doesn't mean you're not going to win a lot of football games, but, I think the days of Alabama, at least this team, just steamrolling unranked teams by 30, and I that's not this team.
It's not. And I think that's probably one of the biggest question marks I had coming from the weekend was what's Alabama's identity now? Because the past two games, it's left me kind of, I don't want to say I will say worried because I don't know where you can even put where you can go to start to fix it. Does it start with the offensive line being able just to match their will on another defensive unit and just being able to run the ball? Like there's no offensive kind of flow. It's kind of all right. If we get the big play here, let's keep going. Other than that, it's all right. We'll figure it out along the way. And to your point, Ryan Williams only had four catches. I think four catches for 32 yards on Saturday. And his first catch didn't come until he had one catch in the first quarter, and then he didn't have another one until almost the fourth. And it's like, where has he been all game? I think South Carolina tried to make it a point that they're going to let everybody else beat him and then try to contain number two. But I think that offensively, you've got to find something, because if you can't just line up and run the ball, it makes it pretty predictable for defense. Like, hey, watch number two, everybody else do what you need to do. And again, the teams that you're going to play are going to get better from this point forward. And if you're asking these questions and biting, for the skin of your teeth, getting past South Carolina, imagine what Tennessee is going to look like. I think, it's early to say, but think about Auburn. If they do find a way to not turn the ball over, how different the Iron Bowl could possibly be if they still have these question marks. And it's. I'm not saying it's panic button time, but after the loss, you felt something, and then after this one, you're like, whoo. There's some things we definitely need to iron out. But I think that you listen, next week is a new opportunity. It's the third Saturday in October. You know exactly what's on the line at this point. And if you kind of find yourself in an Ole Miss situation where if you do not get this ball game, the whole question mark about you is just how are you going to finish? And it's going to be a tight finish because of all the other teams and all the other places in college football that are starting to trend in that direction. Man, there's a lot to break down over the weekend. Want to hear from you as well. 205-834-9450. You text, you call in. Let's react to everything that we saw on Saturday. We'll hear from Kalen DeBoer and Shane Beamer from that game in Tuscaloosa over the weekend, and also hear a little bit more from the SEC and break that down. We'll return here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 622 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and you as well on this reaction Monday, 205-834-9450. Your text, your calls as we react to Alabama's victory, a win. Listen, they won. A win is a win. You won the football game. You knocked off South Carolina in 27-25. I know that that score may not be as indicative of how that game went, but listen, you would much rather have these conversations after a win than to be suffering, one, in the agony of defeat for 2 days, and then still having these problems to discuss as well. But you came out with a victory, and that's all that matters. So we got a chance to hear from, let's get a chance to hear from Kalen DeBoer, head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide, and just his thoughts about the game against South Carolina.
All right. Yep. Another game down to the wire. We're kind of getting accustomed to those. I think there's some things that we can certainly do to make sure that it doesn't get to that point. But we always talk about finding a way to win. And as many times it maybe looked like we weren't, we did. And, the guys, I guess the biggest thing I'm proud of is the response, starting early in the week. Today, there's things I think that happened because of the way they came ready to practice, whether it was just a response Sunday after we got together and kind of talked over the truth of what we had happen a week ago. And then Tuesday, just back to work. So, very, very unified group that understands that there's still so much more we can get better at. I think, we talked a lot about different things that South Carolina would do that would, be tougher matchups for us, areas in the strength of their team that were maybe different than a week ago. And that's the way it's going to be every single week. And so we knew that up front, they were going to be stout, and thought we did a nice job with a balanced attack most of the time. Obviously, when we tried to force the issue and got into some longer situations or tried to press the ball down the field, especially at the end of the first half, that backfired on us. But, defensively, got to the quarterback. We have 3-4 sacks, I think it was, and, three takeaways. And that's, always an emphasis, continues to be an emphasis, and proud of the way the guys came through with those. Three. Did we have 3 or 4? 3, yeah. I couldn't remember if the interception was the 4th or the 3rd. So just proud of the way the guys fight. The onside kick. We talk about our thought process and being 1-0 and focusing on the next play. And I use it from day one about the ball being a funny shaped object and bouncing. We just need to go grab it. It seems pretty simple, but obviously that didn't happen. So the guys are trying, great effort on it, but found a way, a defense, go out there and attack, be aggressive, and put them in a tough spot there on the last play.
That's head coach Kalen DeBoer just breaking down what he saw, his early thoughts from the nail biter from South Carolina over the weekend. And I think that he did a good job of kind of giving the coach speak of how he really feels, because I'm not going to say that they didn't respond in the right way, because it still ended up with a win in the end. But the issues that you saw start to creep into what we're starting to see from Vanderbilt still continued against South Carolina. Like, to me, defensively, and I understand a lot of people are having this issue with the 4-2-5. I'm telling you this as a football player. I don't think it's necessarily the scheme. At some point, you're going to have to look at, let's just be honest, there's no Quentin Williams on the defensive line. There's no Terrell Lewis on the edges. Like, these guys are good, and whether you want to believe it or not, they actually fit the system rather well. They're just not the same caliber of player that we're used to seeing. Like, I still think Jahad Campbell is a great linebacker. He had some issues over the weekend, but he's no Rolando McClain. He's no, D'Amico Ryans from back in the day. But where they are right now, the best 11 that you have, they're just not at the same level that you've seen over the past couple seasons. Like, I still think Damani Jackson is a good corner. My biggest issue with Damani is, one, I think he talks a little bit more than what he actually produces. Not granted, he did have the interception at the end of the game, but also it was a terrible ball by
I was
Lamar
about
Sellers.
to say he just overthrew it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that there's some concerns with Malachi Moore. I don't know. I'm not gonna say he's thinking too much, but there are questionable plays where I'm like, all right, big dog, you've played a lot of football. You've played in space a lot of the time. Why are you missing open field tackles? Why are you missing pressures on the quarterback? And it wasn't like he was, Lenore Sellers had some wiggle to him, but there were almost kill shots that you had, especially off the edge. It's like, big dog, you got to get there. You have to get there. And there's some questionable plays in coverage. And granted, South Carolina's receivers were making plays. They just weren't consistent enough. Mm-hmm. They were making some of the tougher catches. But I'm not saying it's a panic mode right now, but you are definitely going to have to do some soul searching. Now, I don't know if I'm not going to question the leadership that's on Alabama's roster right now, but I'm going to question the leadership style. Now, you go back to Malachi Moore losing his blank at the end of the Vanderbilt game. But he's probably the only one that we've seen that truly it shows that it's affecting him, the performance that they have on the defense, like it as a team, as a unit. Whereas some of the guys, to your point that you made in the first segment, where it's just like, we're Alabama, we'll be all right. I don't necessarily feel like there's no sense of urgency of trying to fix these things. And granted, Jalen Milroe, he was running the ball a lot. It seemed like he was running for his life a good little bit. But even in that fourth quarter, you felt like, man, is he gassed? Like, is he out of it? Is he okay? Do they need to focus on just running the ball with the running backs a little bit more? I don't know. I genuinely don't even know where to start. And I do think that Kalen DeBoer has this demeanor where these guys are going to figure it out. I think they need to see a little bit more juice. They have got to see it because I think that I'm not saying that he's on the hot seat, but there has to be a little bit more pressure. And I'm not going to say I don't like his response. I'll put it like that. I don't like his response to it because again, it could just be, I'm so used to Nick Saban of like, no, when something's not going right, if he has to lose his mind one good time, you see that switch start to flip. I don't know where you could even start to even pinpoint where they could flip that switch. And maybe it's the offensive line, maybe it's the quarterback, but somebody has to get in that locker room and truly put the foot to the fire of like, do you not realize what is at stake game in and game out based off our performance? And I don't know if they got a guy in there that can do it.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think that's a real concern because, I mean, we've even heard DeBoer talk about, leadership and how he kind of views that. And he's, a guy that's, he's a player-led team kind of guy, right? Like he wants the players to be the leaders and he wants them to be the ones that kind of rally the troops. And, and I think maybe that's one of the more head-scratching things about it is the Jalen Milroes of the world that stuck around and made a big point when Nick Saban retired of, we're not going anywhere. Like, we're here to maintain the Alabama standard. Like, we want to be the group that shows that, even though Coach Saban's not here anymore, that doesn't change the way that we approach the game of football here at the University of Alabama. And, you look at him and Malachi and Deontay Lawson and guys kind of in that group, and all you heard through the offseason was how great they were, how great leaders they were, and how good of a job they did on building team chemistry and bringing guys together and keeping that core group intact. And now you're here and you're hitting some bumps in the road, and it's like all that kind of went out the window. Like there doesn't appear to be a guy that's going to get in your face on the Alabama team, and I think that's a problem. And I understand the issue you can face as a coach when you go, all right, do I really want to ream this guy out and risk him quitting on me or going and transferring or whatever? And I understand that's, kind of you got to walk on eggshells a little bit there. But I mean, with your own teammates, like they should be able to hold you accountable. They should be able to get in your face and they should be able to figure things out. And, it's kind of shocking that doesn't seem to be, like you said, there doesn't seem to be that sense of urgency, right? There doesn't seem to be that sense of, you watch the players on the field and like they're trying to figure something out. It's more of just, they're just going to throw their hands up and go, well, this isn't working, and, just kind of sulk about it. And that's, That's concerning. That's something that's got to fix. And you have an opportunity ahead of you this Saturday where, you know, they know, like you said, they know what this opportunity is. They know what this game is. They know what the rivalry is. So, maybe you see a different Alabama team because, they're, oh, it's a ranked game. We can get up for this one. And the last few weeks, you just haven't cared. But, that's the thing that, at least under Nick Saban, I mean, there were times, you had your Georgia State games, your, moments where things didn't go very well. But the way that Alabama typically responded to those games was, they went out there and dominated somebody,
Yep.
and you could see that it wore on them that they weren't focused out there. And now, even just, the way that he opened after the game of, well, we're kind of getting used to these close games. Like, that's not acceptable, though.
Nope.
That's not okay, well, we're just going to win one score games now. Like, you're better than that, right? Like, that is not you're not a team where you look at it and go, you're truly just glad to get a win. Like, you're significantly better talent-wise than South Carolina, than Vanderbilt. You should be able to win. The Tennessee team you've seen the last couple of weeks, you should be licking your chops looking at that team and how they've looked against Florida and Arkansas, but you're not. And yeah, I don't know what the switch is. I don't know if there's one thing that can change and fix all of it, because I think there's a lot of little things and a lot of it's fundamental stuff. And the good thing with fundamental stuff is you can fix that, you can coach that. But there are also a lot of guys on that field that you look at and go, man, we should be past that point. And you're not.
Yeah. John texted in. He says, 5 or 6 years ago, Bama had a problem with playing down the competition despite high expectations. At the end of the season, Nick said it was a locker room leadership issue. Do we think this could be the same? I kind of feel like that. And I'll never forget. And Greg usually brings up this point too. He always said that Coach Saban had a great job of motivating guys to the point that they feel like if they played bad against a UT Chattanooga, or in that point when Vanderbilt was down, that they felt paranoid that they could be upset. And I mean, it made them play a little bit different, made them play with an edge of, all right, yeah, we got to lock in or they're about to pull off an upset. I don't really see that with this team. It doesn't seem, like I said, it just doesn't seem there's a sense of urgency of trying to fix this. Just a bunch of, we'll be able to figure it out. We're Alabama.
Yeah, and it seems like there's an attitude of, oh, well, everybody's going to give us their best game. So if we just win, like, who else is having to deal with this? Okay, but it's been that way for a decade and a half now, and the results used to be a lot different than they are now. So the fact that maybe that's something that they haven't come around to realize, or that's just the attitude they have, that's, that doesn't make it okay.
Maybe they are sipping the rat poison. Maybe maybe somebody got tempted and started taking a little bit of that rat poison, and look at you now. Nail biting your way through South Carolina, barely squeaking. You got Tennessee coming up. Boy, I tell you what. We'll hear from you. 205-834-9450. The phone lines are always open. You can text. You can call in. We'll take a look at the rest of the SEC slate from the weekend. Also get your reaction to everything in college football. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. A familiar tune. That's probably what was ringing in South Carolina's ear the whole game. That's what kept them in the ball game, kept them juiced up. That's all they needed. That's all they needed. Welcome back into Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. And you as well, 205-834-9450. We get your reaction here on just what we've seen over the weekend, especially on the Alabama front. Alabama.
They won, though.
Squeaking by South Carolina. And take a look at some other scores across the SEC. How about Georgia and Mississippi State, the Battle of the Bulldogs? Georgia, when you hear the score, it's a lot closer than what it really felt like during the ball game. But they knock off Mississippi State 41-31. And one, I will say this: Georgia is probably they're in the same boat with Alabama. It's all right. You have kind of. I feel like each team is starting to play down or up to their competition, and it's based off of what they either assume is on the other side and what's on the logos on the helmet. I don't think there's any quote unquote elite team in college football besides maybe Texas, and you can say Oregon. Will Howard may be one of the, maybe not so bright in the head when it comes to situational awareness. It's a recurring theme in college football. I'm starting to see that now.
Yeah.
They're getting all this money, but they can't think. But Georgia does knock off Mississippi State 41-31. Carson Beck throws for 459 yards. And the Red River rivalry in the SEC flavor went about as everybody expected.
For 5 minutes.
Yeah, went about as everybody expected. Texas knocks off Oklahoma 34-3. Tennessee has to go into overtime to knock off Florida. And in the game, I will say this: Florida had their chances. Florida blew it more than they actually can realize. Like, if they go back and watch this tape, they're going to sit there and probably cry a little bit. Where they could have put the game away in multiple situations.
I was about to say there two things from that game. First off, super impressed by Florida and the fact that they were able to come back late in that game and send it to overtime when you had both Graham Mertz and Montrell Johnson hurt and on the sideline, and you were able to bring in Lagway and make something happen, and that was super impressive. However, on the other hand, why did you not go for two?
Dog, you're there.
That was so frustrating to send out the extra point team, then send out and do this crazy trick play formation, then Tennessee calls timeout, and then you get a little tight and you go, well, actually, let's just kick the extra point. Everyone knew if you let that game go to overtime,
Tennessee was getting
when you are clearly punching above your weight class and you get an opportunity to end a football game. Look, if you lose, you lose. But you went out fighting, right? You had the opportunity with the ball in your hands to win a football game, and you didn't on the last play. You can live with that, or at least I can. That was dumbfounding.
Yeah, it was. And Tennessee goes and scores. Well, after Florida misses a field goal to take a 3-point lead in overtime, Tennessee goes and scores a touchdown.
2 plays, and that was,
Yeah, Dylan Sampson, man, I tell you. And then another game going in overtime. And a team that did not hold a lead until the game was final. How about those LSU Bayou Bengals?
Bayou Bengals.
That was my fault.
I like it.
That was my fault.
It.
No, those Bayou Bengals from LSU knock off Ole Miss 29-26. And Garrett Nussmeier, listen, I understand you believe 1,000% in your arm, but sweet Jesus, what's in between your ears, big dog? You gotta look and see. Think a little bit. Just think a little bit.
He made some amazing throws in that game on Saturday.
Man, spectacular.
He made some spectacularly terrible throws as well. And that's that's what he is. I mean, we talked about it last week. Like, he's gonna have a play or two where you're just, he straight up just throws it to a defender. Like, it's not even you really don't even have anything to learn from it. It was just, what the hell are you looking at, big dog? And that happened a couple times, but fortunately, hey, LSU's defense was able to limit Ole Miss offensively, and that's what you needed to do. They let you get back in the game, and that's a big win for LSU, because especially now with the way that some of these other teams are looking, like, you got to feel pretty good about your opportunities. Like, you have some difficult games left, but that Alabama game, I certainly would be on the side of LSU right now, I think, in that matchup. And you got Oklahoma, who doesn't have an offense. Like, things are looking pretty good for LSU right now.
They're peaking at the right time. They're peaking
They're
at the
getting
right
better
time.
for sure.
Absolutely. And then, of course, Missouri takes the trip to UMass, beats the brakes off them 45-3. Still a weird thing to see an SEC school take a trip to Massachusetts, but
Yeah, if you watch parts of the game, I mean, I think my favorite part of the game was just the where you have the video of the team getting off the bus and walking into the locker room, and
it's like a
I
high
mean, there's
school.
high schools around here that look nicer than what they walked into there at UMass on Saturday. But hey, sometimes after a rough stretch in the SEC, you just need to go and play UMass and
get
whoop
right.
up on somebody.
Get you a get right game. And Vanderbilt knocks off Kentucky 20-13 to continue on their winning ways in the SEC. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's talk to our buddy Larry, who's on the road, wants to talk some ball with us. What's going on this morning, Larry?
Hey, guys. I always enjoy the show, but let me ask you a question or two. I'm just saying I'm as big a Bammer as anybody, but the one thing that I've noticed, and we've played, 6 games now, is I guess most of the fans, armchair quarterbacks or whatever, we've got a whole new regime, a 5-2-4. And the thing that amazes me is, and I'm asking you, Damien, you're ex-receiver. How many times do you think Malachi's been taught as a safety or even playing corner, or however he lines up? You do not let the receiver get behind you. And in the Vanderbilt game, on a 4th down and 5th, whatever it was, I'm thinking to myself, what in the world? Y'all remember the play when he threw a touchdown play? I mean, you're just seeing so much confusion at times on defense. And then as soon as South Carolina gets the ball with Alabama, they play more of a zone. They shoot the guy, and the guy gets wide open in the end zone right there, and then gets a safety right there before the half. I see a lot of problems there, but the one thing that I can honestly say is, personally, a lot of these players that are getting paid now, and you're hearing this more and more, and I don't know. I have to agree with what Coach Saban has said. Now that players are being paid, I don't get it. I don't see the passion. I don't see the vigor. I don't see the. Do you guys? You understand what I'm trying to say? I mean, I just wanted to throw that out there and ask your opinion of that.
Yeah, man, Larry. Yeah, we seen it. It's something that's causing this, one, lack of situational awareness, and two, that they just don't have the same intensity.
Yeah, I think it's more of a problem with the team because, you can certainly look at other teams across the country and their players are getting paid and they look motivated and fired up. So I don't think that's the problem with Alabama. I think it's just a problem with, like we were talking about, whether it's the player leadership or it's just people aren't, whatever, they're taking opportunities for granted, whatever it may be. I don't think it's necessarily NIL. I think it's just there's just a little bit of a motivational issue or an intensity issue, whatever you want to call it. So that's something they certainly got to get figured out. But we see you on the phone lines. Keep texting in 205-834-9450. When we come back here on Morning JOX, we'll put a bow on things. Continue to get your reaction to what happened in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. You're listening to us on JOX 94.5.
Welcome back into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order here with you for a few more moments as we get you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning. I know they're going to have some things to get off their chest, boy. Whew. I can only imagine what G-Mac's about to say about this Alabama squad. Just take it with a grain of salt. Just understand he's going to be passionate. I know we call you Crimson Conrad, but I feel like Bama Greg's going to have some things to say, especially with the third Saturday in October looming.
Maybe he can get him fired up.
Maybe so. Let's go to the phone lines, talk to our buddy Wardam Don this morning. What's going on, Don?
Good morning, fellas. Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday, brother.
I tell you what, guys, with Auburn not playing and everything, I think I'll watch football from 11 o'clock in the morning all the way to about 1 o'clock in the morning, and then with that great Kansas State Colorado game. I don't know if you ever still up to see that game. That was a great game.
Avery Johnson,
but Damien, I got a question. Are you falling off the lane train bus, buddy?
No.
Well, I tell you what, he knows how to lose a game just like Billy Napier does too, don't he?
Right. Like, yeah, we're this is the lane we're used to seeing. Like, I'm cool with it. I ain't got no problem.
Not that I have a coach that knows how to lose a game either.
Exactly.
But Conrad, buddy, to me, I think your offensive line is one of your main problems. They're gonna get Milroe killed.
Yeah, I mean, they had played better at times. I mean, first off, South Carolina has two of the best edge rushers in the entire country.
They do.
But yes, to your point, I mean, they did make Alabama's offensive line look silly at times on Saturday.
Well, buddy, how are they going to block James Pierce and the Tennessee defense?
Yeah, you know what? That is certainly a question, Don.
You talking a lot? Yeah, you sound like an Auburn fan that had a bye week, man. You asking some pretty Let's just kind of look within, big dog. Let's kind of focus on what Auburn's got this week too.
Well,
man.
yeah, but I do have a question. I didn't really get to watch Missouri play, but I heard Luther Burton got hurt. Is that true?
I saw bits and pieces. Well, the bits and pieces I saw him, he was out there, but I mean, I don't think it was anything too major.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard he hurt his shoulder.
Yeah, he'll be all right. He got Auburn this week. You think UMass is going to take him out of the game?
He will be just fine, according to the coaching staff. That was their quote. He will be just fine.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. Have a great day, guys.
Absolutely, brother. You just focus us on head, Auburn. Let's not do this because y'all got your own issues. At least Alabama's figuring stuff out after W's.
Really need Alabama to win on Saturday.
It should be a good one, though, nonetheless. I do think it'll be a good game.
I don't know if it'll be a good game. It'll be a close game. But I don't know if it'll be a good game.
All Alabama's got to do is replicate what Florida did. Seems simple enough. That's one way to look at it.
I guess.
That's one way to look at it. Oh, boy. Buckle up, man. It's going to be a fun Monday here on JOX 94.5. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. They're coming up next. Keep it locked right here.